we welcome Yixing Chen to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us, and congratulations on your upcoming position as an assistant professor of marketing at the University of Notre Dame that you'll be starting in July 2020, yes?
Yes.
How are you feeling about it?
Well, it feels great. Actually, in marketing, usually we get this, we start our job market kind of a little bit earlier because we usually start at the end of our fourth year.
Okay.
Usually we go to search for jobs, in the summer.
Yeah.
It's good to be done. And then, so I don't have to travel that much now. And then, so I can work on my stuff, do my last year here at Texas A&M.
All right. We'll come back to what you're working on right now. But for the moment, let's jump in with what is your favorite superpower?
That's actually my favorite question of the show. I thought about it quite a bit. So I have two options, but I'm gonna just lay it out here. One is precognition. That will be super cool to have, where you can anticipate things early on.
Right.
Or a funnier one will be I can eat, but I don't have to get fat. So that would be cool too.
What would you do with precognition? What would be the first thing you would do?
So let's say if I know I met a sad person.
Yeah.
I want to know that is there going to be a good thing happen afterwards for this person? I just kind of want to know and see the trajectory of what are going to happen to people, and also, but it brings some of the dark side, which is you might be carry a lot of burden because you kind of know what's going to happen to others, and maybe you won't be able to do anything about it, but it's good to see the trajectory. And so many times I see sad people and you see like good things happen to them afterwards. I kind of want to see that. It's kind of awkward feeling, but it feels like you want to know something early on, but then see if you can do something about it. So
you would tell them something good is about to happen to you, or what would you do with that information?
I would say I probably won't tell them because I want them to feel the whole process, right? But you get to see how different people react to different kinds of scenarios. But if we're trying to intervene that process, it's kind of deviate from what is actually should happen in the first place.
Yeah.
So I probably wouldn't tell them, but I want to see that. So I want to see how different people react to different kinds of scenarios, and you also see what is going to happen to get to see the whole process.
When you watch a TV show, do you really get antsy to know how the story ends? Do you get tempted to binge watch ahead?
Yes, actually, for example, like I'm watching Good Doctors right now. So I finished up the first 2 seasons. I'm on season 3. I really, really want to know what is going to happen at the end of season 3.
Yeah.
So if there's a lot of Chinese TV show, usually you can have the script, so I can go and check it out. I know it's kind of lame, but I just want to check it out a little bit anyway to see what's going to happen.
Give us 60 seconds on your road to Maze.
Okay. I did my undergrad in China at a local university in Sichuan, China. And I spent 1 year as an exchange student at University of New Mexico. And then I finished on my senior year back to China. And then I did my MBA again at the University of New Mexico. And then started doing my PhD here at Texas A&M.
Okay. What was the process like of studying in the United States as an exchange student from China? What was all of that? What was all of that like for you?
Yeah. So when I was an undergrad, I was majoring in finance, economics. At that point, I don't really know what I want to do. And there's an opportunity came. So one of our professors at our undergrad university were saying, there's opportunity you can study in the U.S. I don't really know what that is at that point, to be very honest. So my grandpa told me, you like it or not, you may want to try it out first, right? So you can go there, do 1 year of it as an exchange student. You can decide whether or not you're going to go to do your master. You can decide because you've already experienced that life. So he encouraged me to go. I went to University of New Mexico. I've never heard of that university before. A lot of my friends haven't heard that university either. So I get to spend a year just studying U.S., which is, coursework after, basically I take like 10 courses in 1 year. So get to really feel what it is like studying U.S. So at that point, I still doing finance and economics as an exchange student, but that's where I actually started to shift a little bit to marketing, which I think we're going to talk about in a second.
Yes.
why I chose marketing eventually, but that's where everything started.
Well, let's jump into it now.
Yeah. So what is interesting is I met a professor, actually two professors. There are a couple, Osif and Linda Farrell at University of New Mexico.
Okay.
And it's very interesting because OC used to be a faculty member here at Texas A&M about 30 years ago. So I get to observe two things. First of all is the professor's life, especially in business school.
Okay.
So second is they actually asked me, do you want to try it out and see how it feels to take a marketing course?
Okay.
And so I took Linda's Marketing 202, which is marketing principles.
Uh-huh.
That's the first exposure to marketing. Right. And I started to really explore this area as an undergrad at that point. Then, of course, I went back to China and finished out my senior year, and I decided to come back to do an MBA in marketing. That's pretty much like how we get started. But of course, I also met several other faculty members during the process and get to help me shape that thinking about why I want to do a PhD in marketing. So that's pretty much.
You said something about a moment ago about the professor's life. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I was grown up. So basically my family, we have a lot of professors in my family. So my grandpa is an engineering professor. My grandma also worked for the university. My dad is a medical professor. So like early on as a kid, I've already kind of started to see a lot of how professors' life look like, right? So I know they have autonomy. Usually I kind of clarify that to people. It's not really freedom per se. It's more like autonomy. So you can choose when to do what. It's not exactly you have a lot of free time. So it's a lot of back end of scene kind of work where you work all the time, but you get to choose when to work on what.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I observe that I really like about being a kind of professor. Mm-hmm. That's first. And second, but I don't really know what I want to do in terms of profession. I get to see engineering professor, medical professor. So I started doing business because I really, really dislike physics. So I get a chance to go to a engineering school, like do an engineering major or a finance economics. Like at least my strategy of deciding what I want to do. If I don't really know, my first step will be eliminate what I don't like. So I know that I won't like engineering. I'm not very good at it. So I won't do it. So finance economics more like a broad choice for me in the first place. But then I can start, once I kind of try more things, I can get to eliminate more options that I don't like. So I don't get to explore more. So that's the process. And then in terms of PhD, there are two people that are very important. Is Catherine Roster at University of New Mexico and Lisa Shear at University of Missouri, Columbia. Okay. So they opened the doors to me about doing research in marketing. So they helped me a lot about thinking about PhD, along with O.C. Farrell and Linda Farrell. That's pretty much how I get started thinking about doing a PhD in marketing when I was an MBA student at University of New Mexico.
Right. And what specifically was it about moving from finance to marketing? So you mentioned kind of narrowing it down toward business.
Yes.
And then the transition specifically from finance to marketing. What did that look like in your mind?
Yeah. So when I do marketing, like when I do finance courses, economics courses, a lot of courses saying, capital market, you study those concepts.
Right.
And the first time when I do marketing, I feel like the first time I get exposure that marketing is much broader than advertising or personal selling, right? Especially this key concept, and I get to know like we're kind of managing customers, so I get to see the very vivid side of business, where how you manage your customers, how you value your customers as assets, how you actually start a business, what is your business model. All of these ideas kind of pop up that I feel very exciting when I hear about all these kind of things. Startups, entrepreneurship. A lot of the concepts are really surrounded about this big domain of marketing. That's pretty much kind of an initial kind of spark I have. And then later moving on, and then of course I do more research in that space, I get to see more fascinating aspects of marketing. But I think the broad idea I'm trying to say here is I get to see I can really drill down to the business where you think about like customers and you think about how you want to create a business and how you're going to generate revenue from a customer standpoint.
Right.
So that's what I really, really like about marketing. Feel excited about it. So
I had a similar moment. Obviously, I did not choose to go the marketing route, much less a PhD in marketing. But I had a similar moment with Kim over in the Career Management Center, where I talked about my perception of marketing as a very like creative, kind of ethereal discipline, and she said, "That's not really how we do it here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very left-brained discipline here. Not to say that there aren't creative elements to it, but I had never thought about marketing as something that's almost algorithmic in some cases. I just never would have considered it that way. Let's back up just a moment. You talked a little bit about where you grew up,
all right,
and your early life. How many in your family?
Me, my mom, and dad.
Okay,
3 of them.
And what was your greatest challenge as a child?
I argue a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
I always argue with people. And I think the biggest challenge is learn when to shut up.
Oh.
I think that's
that was a good one for me too.
Yeah, you can argue with people all the time. That's fine, but you have to know when to shut up.
Right.
That's what I would say. The biggest challenge.
Now, you said it was you, your mom, and dad, and I know a little bit about how things function from a family perspective in China, but are there, most families are one child?
In my generation, I would say yes.
Okay.
Yes. What
was that, and you may not have a whole lot of perspective on this because most of your peers were also only children, but how do you think that made life different for you and your generation from a perspective of not having siblings? How did that make things easier? How did that make things harder?
Yeah, I think, the people might say like the immediate thought came into my mind is you get more attention because you're the only kid in the family.
Sure.
What I would say is the direct impact on me is I love making friends.
Yeah.
And then if I really like those friends, I treat them. I kind of perceive them as my siblings. If I have very, very close friends, I treat them as siblings. Okay. But I don't really have siblings, so you don't really know how does it feel, right? I always said that. I said, you're such a close friend of mine. If feel like you're my younger brother,
right?
So that's probably the direct impact. So I would say I want to make friends and try to see who I like the most, and then I just feel like they're my siblings. That kind of feeling, because I wish I can have, let's say, a younger sister or younger brother. Yeah. So I can share some thoughts with others rather than just having friends.
Right.
That's the direct impact. And another thing is when you have all the attention, you might also need to handle all the pressure.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Right. So like to me, I think I appreciate that because I grew up with my grandparents and since grade, I think from kindergarten to first grade, grew up with my grandparents. They give me a lot of freedom and do not really say this is what you have to do.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. Where usually you see a lot of families, your parents or grandparents will perhaps set up the goal for you. Yeah. You just need to follow, kind of do good. I appreciate I don't have that, even though I'm the only kid in the family. Yeah. With like people might say you have all the attention, you have to handle all the pressure because everybody has their hope of expectation, right? So.
If you don't mind my asking, you mentioned you were with your grandparents from kindergarten through first grade. Why was that?
Oh, why was that? Oh, because, grandparents are the university professors.
Right.
So we have a kindergarten and primary school are just kind of located in the same area. So it's more like affiliated with the university.
Oh, I see.
So that's why I just started there with parents grandparents, and parents are really busy with their jobs. So grandparents took care of me in the first couple of years from kindergarten to first grade.
And then something else you said piqued my curiosity. So the kindergarten and the first grade were associated with the university.
Yes.
Was that true for primary and secondary school all the way up through the university, or was it just the early part of the educational process?
We do have middle school and high school affiliated with the university as well.
Okay.
I didn't go to those middle school and high school because I actually went to another middle school and high school. But yes, I think we have 4 major universities back to my hometown, and they all have their affiliated kindergarten, primary school, middle school, and high school. So.
That's fascinating because in the United States, there's those entities are very disparate. Having looked at both models, what do you think is the case for having an educational an educational organization that handles a student potentially from kindergarten all the way up through university level? And what are the arguments against that model?
Yeah, I never thought about it actually. In our case, the affiliation meaning, like to me, the direct benefit is I don't have to pay tuition to that kindergarten or primary school. So you get to see, you get to be surrounded with very highly educated people.
Right.
So, but that's probably the reason why I also did not go to middle school and high school there.
Right.
Because there are better options out there. So like in my hometown, I went to one of the best middle schools and one of the best high schools. They're not affiliated with a university, but you get to choose, right? So of course, every stage we have to pass exams to get into the next stage.
Right.
In China, to do to have a higher level of education. But that's pretty much my thinking is after I finished on my primary school and then have to go to middle school, and what is the best out there?
Yeah.
So what options do I have? So then I pass exam. After the middle school, what are the options out there for high school? So I can go ahead with it. So I don't really see good and bad necessarily for like a university affiliated system. It's really depending on if there are good options out there, can you get it?
Right.
So that's more like my thought process here. I think it's that in that sense it's very similar here because after you finish up your high school, you have to SAT, you have to pass university entrance exam, and which college you want to go. That's kind of the similar setup actually. Not very different, I would say.
Okay. And on that, many of our listeners are either students or parents of students in the process of deciding which direction to go in life, in school. Knowing what you know now, how would you think about the process of choosing a major? And of having done some transitioning around a little bit, how would you think about that process? And you can, if you want, you can roll in the process of thinking about choosing a graduate degree, if you wish.
Yeah, that's probably gonna be a long answer because I think about this question quite a bit.
Yeah. Let's have it.
I would say, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the first thing is it's very easy for people to say, find your passion. That's kind of a classic answer. People say, just find your passion so you can go ahead with it.
That's right.
But in fact, it's extremely hard. We all know that. It's finding your passion, follow your passion. It's just very hard. So from a practical standpoint, the first step of my choice usually start with eliminate the choices I don't like. Yeah. So as I said, like in high school, I was really bad at physics. I really don't like physics.
I liked physics. Physics didn't like me.
Yeah, I'm not very good at that. So I don't know. I think engineering may not be a good choice for me.
Yeah.
That's kind of the first thing. When I go to undergrad, so that's my first job. My first job is a math instructor. It's, people keep saying it's so weird that you're good at math, but you're not good at physics. I taught math for a couple of years at a company. Now it's a public traded company, U.S. So it's private educational services provider in China. I've been there for a couple of years.
Okay.
So that's my first job. I enjoy teaching. So that's kind of started. I started to have something that I'm really, really like at the same time very good at. Yeah. So that's the second thing is after you eliminate the choices that you don't like, you may want to start with something you're good at the same time.
Okay.
So that will be the second thing, which is I call it a strategic move, where if you don't really know what you want to do,
right,
you might want to start with something that you're good at.
Yeah.
Then the third thing is I call it a flexible move. You have to allow yourself to explore. Like sometimes people are, in an urgent. They're urgent to figure out, I just want to find something, say, by the age of 18, so I want to do this forever. We have to be mindful that we want to allow ourselves to have time to explore options. So that's what happened to me while I was teaching, doing my undergrad. That's where I realized, maybe I like teaching, I'm good at teaching, but maybe that's not all I want to do. Because I don't feel like I'm creating knowledge in that sense while I was teaching. I'm more like teaching people how to take exams. It's more like you're teaching a skill. That skill is passing exam, not necessarily creating new knowledge. That's where I started. What could be a career that I can kind of combine the things I'm good at. At the same time, I can create new knowledge or something that is more exciting. So that's what I mean by, want to allow ourselves, give us a little bit more time to figure out that. That's why I did an MBA as a transition to get to explore more options.
Yes, and I think that I think that's one of the reasons that so many people are wanting to major in business now is because it offers so many more options after the fact. I think that's actually a pretty optimal choice for a lot of people because there's so many different things that you can do with a business degree.
Yeah, now, when I look back, Ben, about this choice I had, I'm very, very excited. And a lot of friends are telling me that they're saying like, you're a lucky guy because I really enjoy what I'm doing right now. Mainly because of course, first, get to teach and get to do research at the same time and doing something that I research topics I really want to do.
Right.
And on top of that, it's a very compatible platform. That's what I wanted to mention as well. When I early, observe how OC and Linda Farrow and other business professors, their life,
right?
It's you actually can do multiple things being a professor. You can write books.
Yes. You
can give talks. So you get a lot of different forms of different ways of doing things.
Sure.
That's what I call a compatible choice. So you get to do a lot of things at the same time. So
let's talk a little bit about your research that you've done over the last few years. But first of all, just tell us a little bit about the work that you've been doing.
Yes. So I mainly do how to quantify. So, firms are spending a lot of money, nowadays on all these marketing. So they are making a lot of marketing investments. And firms usually don't know what's the return.
Right.
Or they based on, so basically there's lack of a scientific way of quantifying what is the return on marketing investments. That's what I initially started doing. I have a paper in social media space. We're just trying to see firms are posting a lot of stuff on social media, but what is the optimal way of posting to drive engagement? So that's kind of the question. And I'm surprised that initially when we started working on this project, and nobody has answered this question before. Even though we got a lot of interest in the industry, practitioners keep asking us, that's very interesting to know. Later, my dissertation have a broader scope that I realized return on marketing investment, this concept is not just about financial return. There are a lot of impact of marketing investment can on society. So it's not financial return. It's not just sales, stock price, revenue anymore.
Right.
What would happen? So like firms are okay making investment, but what is that impact on society? So one of the papers I have is school districts spend a lot of money on internet access.
Yes.
They're promoting they are the most connected classroom. They're promoting that they are technology based campus.
Okay.
But what's the return on that? Because you're spending a lot of money on that. Does it really translate to tangible return in terms of student performance, or is there any unintended consequences of that?
And what can you tell us about what you found?
What I found in that paper is when internet access investment of a school district increases, academic performance increase. But at the same time, student violation behavior also increase. So I found out this basically disciplinary consequences of internet access spending. So the argument there could be you're actually providing more technology. You're actually providing a channel for more information, in particular unfiltered information. And actually in other fields, there are people studying what's the impact of internet on crime and HIV transmission. Because they're one paper actually, Yixing Chen at the University of Minnesota, he has a paper on what is the impact of Craigslist entry in U.S. How would that actually increase the incidence of HIV in the U.S.? The argument is because they're providing a channel for information.
Right.
And that channel is usually unfiltered channel.
Right.
And you get a chance for people to engage on the same platform. That's actually unintended consequence and also a surprising finding in the research.
Was there any effect, and this might have been something that you didn't get a chance to look at yet, but was there any effect to introducing some kind of progressive filtering sequence that would give students more or less unfiltered information by the time they were, say, 18, which they'll eventually have at college anyway?
Yes.
But then if a student is 11, for example, that would heavily filter the information that they had access to. Is that something that you had considered?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good question, Ben, because I got a lot of questions. People are saying like nowadays a lot of schools they may just block YouTube, for example, on campus, right? So can you test that? So far I don't have that information yet, but what I could possibly do is I can actually collect information about all the schools and their internet filtering policy.
Right.
We may have very strict internet filtering policy for some schools, and we have some of a loose internet filtering policy. If we see that kind of spectrum, how would that affect my effect? So let's say the effect will be shut down if for those schools that are having very strict internet filtering policy. That will be a direct testament to my mechanism.
Right. And then one interesting follow-up question to that is, does it then also mitigate the performance bump that you would get? Like if you're
Yes.
filtering the access for just say an 11-year-old, then does the 11-year-old grow up on perhaps a more emotionally healthy path, but also not get the performance boost that you would get from internet access?
Because when you provide a channel for information, there are goods and bad. Right?
Sure.
So the goods will be you have more learning opportunities, you get access to more options for learning as well. So that might also be the case.
Right. What has been the most challenging aspect of your work in your PhD?
Yeah. In terms of, so I would say like in terms of my dissertation research, and I would talk about PhD life in general. In terms of research, because I have dissertation essays, I'm actually looking at school districts, which is public K-12 education. I also look at healthcare, which I have a paper, studying how we can improve the utilization of cancer screening. And I also have research in energy space.
Okay.
So where I think the challenging aspect is how you actually, let's say I have 3 years or 4 years or 5 years in the PhD program, how you get exposure to many industry sectors at the same time, but really have deep knowledge in all of them. That's very challenging. It's not like I'm doing a research out of it and I'm done. You have to know the institutional setting, focusing on multiple sectors, but at the same time, to understand all of them, it's very challenging. Mm-hmm. Because every time when I work on a new project, it's a new sector, it's a new industry, it's a new set of collaborators. That's very challenging, like in my dissertation research. Of course, people always say you actually have a diverse perspective because you're looking at multiple sectors, trying to see what is the return on marketing investment from a societal perspective. But at the same time, you may also get an argument saying you're pretty distracted because you're all over the place.
Sure.
So how you actually convey a message that, no, I'm pretty focused. I think the way to say I'm very passionate about what I'm doing, so I do what I want to do, and then try to generate insights for practitioners. That would be the goal here. But it's also very challenging, as I said, because you have to.
When you're entering a new field, what is your preferred way of kind of familiarizing yourself with the literature in that field? Where do you start?
Yeah. Because working with, because two of my advisors, Hari Sridhar and Vikas Mittal at Rice University,
right?
Hari is right here at Texas A&M, is I think through working with them, also the first thing I learned is we start the conversation with the people who care about that question first, right? So if we work on the social media paper, I have talked to social media managers of newspapers, content platforms first. Mm-hmm. I have to understand that question first from an industry perspective.
Okay.
That will be my starting point.
Right.
And then I will go and see what do we know so far. So usually I think one of classic practice I did is I would do this huge literature review table, kind of code, let's say 40 papers in 8 to 10 different dimensions, and try to kind of break all these papers down into components and see where are the things that, where do we need to improve? Mm-hmm. That will be, so kind of question first, and then what do we know?
Right.
Will be a good starting point.
That makes sense. Any funny stories? Hari has a lot of jokes. Are you a jokester as well?
Yeah, I am. I love jokes, and then I talk a lot of jokes in my class. And then one funny story here happened in Texas A&M is I joined Texas A&M in 2015 when I applied for a PhD program.
Right.
But I was this super close to join Penn State.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't get in eventually, and that's where Hari was at.
Right.
I think in 2014 2014. That's when we did an interview.
Right.
And then I always told people he followed me to join Texas A&M because I joined first. Okay. That's a pretty funny story because we talk like when he was at Penn State, and then he came to Texas A&M to give a job talk, a research seminar in 2015, and then he joined in 2016. That's the very funny story. Like we started kind of talking to each other when I'm trying to get into Penn State, but it turns out we gathered together here at Texas A&M.
Let's talk a little bit about machine learning. It's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, and a lot of people like to say machine learning when they really just mean they ran a regression and then respecified it until everything was significant. That's not really machine learning. What is machine learning exactly for our audience?
Yeah, I'm not kind of the expert of machine learning. I also started to learn how to use machine learning algorithms to solve problems, but I can give some of my perspectives. I think I would say three different things here. First is what is supervised machine learning, what is unsupervised machine learning, and what is a kind of economics relationship between economics and machine learning.
Okay.
So I think machine learning, supervised machine learning usually deal with a problem of prediction, right? So I think that's pretty classic where, let's say, Facebook needs to decide where I'm going to put this ad on. Mm-hmm. So what they need to do is they need to do a prediction task about which place that audience or customers will be more likely to click, or they click more. So that's a prediction task where you need to build a set of algorithms to predict. But that's not really machine learning yet, because what is really machine learning here is that algorithm itself is flexible enough to handle a very big data set, and you don't specify pre-specify any functional form.
Right.
So you're trying to let the data speak about what is a functional form and what is the relationship between y and x. Mm-hmm. And you are not really trying to figure out any specific relationship of x1 and y. You are trying to figure out what's the combination of x1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to predict that y very well. So that's the first part of machine learning, which is the flexible functional form, and to handle big data set, they can capture complex relationships.
Right.
And I think the second part is you get a chance to validate your model. It's so because if you just use the data set and you're trying to feed that data set with complex form, it might be a very bad model to predict a new data set. Mm-hmm. So in machine learning, people usually do is you get a new data set. Let's say you have one data set, you separate these data sets into different components, and you would try to use part of that to estimate the model and try to use the rest of it to validate the model.
Right.
So you will achieve good prediction even out of the sample.
Right.
So that will be I think the important component of a machine learning, but supervised machine learning. And unsupervised, usually you have a lot of images, text. You're trying to, let's say you're trying to get a sense of what are the topics of those text, for example. You get a lot of text. Here, you don't really have Y. Mm-hmm. You just have a lot of X's. Then you're trying to get some of the specific new X's out of a set of X's. Because you have a lot of text information, image information. You're trying to get a sense of what is going on here. How many topics here are in the text. That will be more like along the line of unsupervised machine learning.
Right.
And finally, I think I learned a lot of great things from this professor, Susan Athey at Stanford University. She's a professor of economics there. She has a classic example of describing what's the difference between what social scientists usually care about, which is causal inference problem versus machine learning problems.
Okay.
So she said, Facebook may say, where should I put the ad on? So what you're going to do is usually you predict where people will click the most. That's a prediction task, which is a machine learning task.
Yeah.
But what you're actually really trying to solve is what would happen to this ad if I put this ad in a different place.
Okay.
So in the machine learning world, you don't really have that kind of counterfactual concept.
Okay.
You're not comparing what would happen to you if you are in a different scenario.
Right.
But that's usually what social scientists deal with.
Yeah.
Say economics, minimum wage. What would you do, right? What would happen if you increase the minimum wage?
If it went up, right.
That's usually not there in a pure computer scientist or statistics machine learning world, but it's really deeply rooted in social science.
Right. So it sounds like you're talking about analytics techniques that are a little bit beyond me, but it sounds like the nearest parallel that I can think of for what you're describing with supervised machine learning. It sounds a little bit like random forests. you're basically just drawing different combinations of opening specifications and then figuring out which one gets you to the best final specification?
Yeah, random forest is one of the very, very widely used machine learning algorithms because you have a specific kind of algorithm, which is forest, which is tree-based algorithm to figure out what is the relationship. Basically, you're not really trying to figure out really, you're trying to use a set of X's to predict Y really well.
Right. What are you looking forward to most about your upcoming research opportunities, about working at the University of Notre Dame and the time that you still have here? What excites you the most about what's coming?
Yeah, like I would say I would go with both academic life and personal life.
Sure.
Academic life-wise, I really want to work with more organizations and companies in Chicago area. So I'm really excited about all these collaboration with companies because I get to hear what people care about in the first place. At the end of the day, you want to do something that is relevant, and you have to talk to the people who have the questions. So I'm really working on both energy projects, K-12 education sectors, and healthcare providers. So I wish I can get more opportunities there at Notre Dame to work with more companies. But then that can, at the same time, enrich my teaching a lot. Like I need to teach MBA courses very soon. When I imagine when I step into the classroom, you want to be a relevant researcher. So you want to have experience. So I think research and teaching complement each other in that sense, which is I'm really, really passionate about. I feel like if I can get to work with more organizations, I can do my teaching better, and I can get a lot more questions from my MBA students, and I can get back to research. So I think that's kind of a classic cycle, I would say. And personal life-wise, I'm very excited about Chicago because they have a lot of good Chinese restaurants. And especially exciting is Chicago starting actually this September, just started that Hainan airline. They're having a nonstop flight from my hometown to Chicago.
Oh.
So I don't have to travel that much nowadays to go back to my hometowns, which is pretty exciting.
It's still a pretty long flight.
It's like about 14 hours, I would say. So it's pretty. It is very long.
Yes. Your research consists of digital marketing strategy design, utilizing data to help cure cancer, many other topics focused on societal outcomes of marketing investments, like we talked about earlier with education. What project or research topic are you most proud of, and why?
I'm really excited about one project about cancer prevention. So I'm going to talk this project a little bit because we haven't touched that project yet.
Please.
So basically, get a chance to talk to doctors, like working for a major medical school in the U.S.
Right.
And this doctor is a liver cancer expert, a professor of internal medicine.
Okay.
So he was saying this compliance issue in the healthcare space, where even though medical research keeps showing that if you come for screening every 6 months, we will increase the probability of early detection. You will do much better, and in terms of survival rate. So please come to do this screening every 6 months. Right. So develop that good, especially for those at-risk patients.
Right.
But he says he's surprised that still, even though research keeps showing that in the medical space, and we still have very low utilization rate of cancer screening services. And we heard marketing can help. So can you guys help, right? So I said, okay, that sounds very exciting. So what we did is we had an experiment, and actually that's a very exciting experiment because we have done this experiment for over 18 months and for 1,800 patients. It's a very, very long and big effort.
Yes.
So what happened is we have, like in one of the groups, we just do regular user care. Patients come and doctors or medical professors just provide their recommendations as usual. Right. In a group, we send out an outreach letter demonstrating the risk of not coming for screening and what are the potential benefits of coming for screening. Yep. And then we have follow-up phone calls. That's the second group. So we're trying to outreach, and hopefully you can come. And the third group is we have this outreach letter, demonstrate the same kind of outreach letter, demonstrate the risk and also providing benefits of if you come for screening. And then we have this motivational education through this research staff. What does that mean is we know that you might have some mental barrier. You do not want to come for screening. So during the phone call process, we will help you alleviate that barrier. Say you say, okay, there may be some pain associated, with this test, or I don't really want to because I have to take one day off. So you have all these mental or barriers or concerns, and the research staff will help you alleviate that barrier and try to encourage you to come for screening.
Okay.
So that's kind of the basic setup. And what we showed is in the 2 experimental groups, which is we have outreach letter and we also have outreach letter and motivational education, we increased the utilization rate by 20%.
Oh.
Which is a big news and
that's
good news
very
for
impressive.
doctors. But they have shown that in the medical research as well. What is really interesting from a marketing standpoint is patients are different. So we want to show that how patients are different in terms of this effectiveness. So we do this outreach letter. On average, might improve by 20%, but for some individual, the probability may increase only by 2%. For some other individuals, maybe 45%. So because patients are different in terms of their conditions, their income status, education, etc.
Right.
So can we have a way to show this effect is so heterogeneous or so different among different kinds of patients?
Right.
That's where we leverage machine learning to solve that problem.
And then the obvious next question is, what sort of data do you need to capture to know which bucket a person fits into?
Yeah.
And what information do you have about that?
So we have 4 different categories of patient information. First, we have demographics.
Right.
Basically, your age, your gender, your ethnicity. And then we have your health status. So like Child-Pugh score, Charlson index, etc. And we have your visit history, like the number of primary care visits 1 year prior to your entry to the hospital. And we have your healthcare system accessibility factor, saying like how close you are to the hospital and what kind of insurance you got. Right. So those are the basic for how we conceptualize those 4 categories. And we will show how this effect will be so different among different patients.
Right.
That's kind of the information we have.
It seems like some of that information would be pretty easy to get. Demographic information, accessibility information, all of that stuff is pretty easily available. Things like how often the person has gone to the doctor, it seems like HIPAA might make that a little bit more difficult to get access to. So how do you deal with those kinds of challenges? Yeah,
we have to. So basically, like working with this kind of data set, and there are 2 major challenges. First is privacy related concern.
Right.
Second is basically what level. So kind of information you can get.
Right.
So privacy concern is obvious. Like for example, if we one challenge we have is if we can possibly get address information of patients, that's not possible in our case. That is definitely not doable. So we cannot get your address information. So what we do is we get the first 3 digits of your zip code. That's the best we can do so far.
Okay.
That's the first piece of information, like privacy related concern. And the second is there are a long process of getting the experiments approved. What kind of informed consent you need to get. So in that space, setting up the experiment needs a lot of challenges. Finally, related to your question about the data on number of primary care visits, fortunately, we get access to the electronic medical records, so we get to see that information as a pretty kind of directly accessible variable. But there are a lot of other challenges going on.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's been the best moment for you? Like what's been the thing that made you feel like your research is having an impact, or made you feel good to be alive about what you're doing?
Yeah, like I was telling my students when I do analytics, right? So it's a very hard subject, like analytics, and I have a lot of students who are not really interested in analytics because they're thinking like analytics are about models or these kind of things.
Right.
So I told them like what excites me the most. I feel like I'm doing something that is a little bit more than useless. That's the way. How would I describe that? Is that you feel like you're doing something somebody cares.
Right.
Right. So like if I'm trying to say I can improve, I'm not saying we're providing something that we can cure cancer. That's not what we're doing. We definitely, there are a lot of doctors and researchers who are dedicated to this. We can make something a little bit better. So like in terms of like healthcare, personalized practice, like in healthcare, can we make that a little bit better?
Right.
Using the techniques we know so far. I think that's why I feel most excited, because when I communicate these results with the doctors, and both of my advisors are like screaming, they love what we found.
Yeah.
And the doctors see the core value of what we did.
Right.
So he is ready to actually think about, take our findings, and we will do the next round of implementation if possible. And we will test this in the field. Right. So the implementation part is also makes me excited, because what you find out could possibly lead to a bigger impact.
Sure.
Actually, Dr. Lamberry really has an impact on me in that sense, where when he shared his trajectory, right? So he talks about he started as a service researcher and moved to healthcare and finally cancer care. So it's really a trajectory of what I learned from that is it's not just about impact, but also like at the same time you feel very passionate about what you're doing. So that's pretty exciting.
That's great. You mentioned earlier, so we were talking about cancer screenings. The two obvious ones that you always hear about in terms of you can greatly improve your prognosis if you do these cancer screenings are colonoscopies and mammograms. Are there any other forms of cancer that you looked into that you found a patient can significantly improve their prognosis with this particular type of cancer?
So I have limited knowledge about this particular topic. I think medical research keeps showing that many kinds of cancer, say liver cancer, breast cancer, different kinds of cancer, they benefit from this fact that if patients can come for screening because they will improve early detection rate. In particular, what we're looking at is a HCC, which is a specific kind of liver cancer.
Okay,
that is especially important in this context because so basically that your symptoms may not show up until very late stage.
Okay.
So that's why we want to keep monitoring that process of liver cancer. That's why it's even more important in this case that we want to encourage you to come for screening so we can help you better identify if you have issues. Then we can go from there. There will be much better treatment options available if we identify them earlier.
Okay. Of all the skills you've earned that will help you in your opportunities upcoming with the rest of your time here and at Notre Dame, what do you think is of those skills, which is the best combination of hard-earned and helpful? And what I mean to say is, what's the thing that will help you the most that was hardest to figure out?
Yeah. I think hardworking, it turns out, is a fairly easy thing to do.
Yeah.
What is really
Shannon
hard.
Deere agrees with you.
Yes, I think that's because you actually have a lot of control on that.
Yes.
Like being a hardworking person.
Yes.
And I think a lot of my peers, everybody's working really hard. What is really hard is setting up a clear milestones and work backwards. And make it happen. That's so I think I wouldn't say I did this very well, but I guess I try to do it very well.
Right.
Which is I'm trying to think if in 5 years I want to get here. What do I need to do right now? So I just have to set up those milestones, and I have very clear goals and objectives I need to kind of fulfill. That's just me.
Right.
So I want to set up those clear milestones. It's very hard to get where you need to set up the goals and you make sure you work backwards and you make sure you complete it.
Right.
So that's one. Second is what I learned from my advisors is the combination of persistence and but not cut corners. I think that's very difficult.
Okay.
Especially not cut corners.
Right.
That's a very, very challenging. We have this tendency, right? Like I think it's easy for us to say, okay, it's fine. We'll just let it go. It's okay. That kind of thing. So that precision needs to come from not cutting corners. I think that's what I learned.
Does that relate to things we were talking about earlier, like data challenges, that sort of thing?
Yes. Like I keep pushing, right? So I think in the school district paper, we need to collect information about basically, you need to collect internet download speed, possibly if you can collect internet information. So the starting point is I know that I talked to the Texas Education Agency people. They probably hate me the most right now. I talked to a lot of people work at Texas Education Agency. They will know that there's a student at Texas A&M keep contacting us about asking all kinds of questions about our data that I know that they don't have the legal authority to track information at that school level about the internet information.
Yeah.
But what I realize is I want to keep pushing and say, okay, if it's not available, I found a survey Texas Education Agency conducted a few years ago, and they said, we're sorry because the data was not there anymore. So then I have to search around in a different space. So and I finally found out that data from a Universal Service Administrative Company, which is a company monitors the process of E-rate program. They actually provide the internet download speed and upload speed at the school level. since 2016. So that's very useful information for me.
Sure.
And when I say not cutting corners, in this case will be, you don't want to give up that early. It's not, yes, they've already clearly told me that we don't have this information. We have no legal authority to track that information, but I would try my best to actually say, I'll try to find somewhere else. And if the easy way to cut corners here will be, I'm fine. I don't have to have that piece of information. I can still build a story around that.
Right.
But you want to be a good thing, and you want to communicate your findings with all the school districts and all the superintendents or principals.
Right.
You just got to have some tangible information along that line.
Sure.
And when I'm working on the papers, what I learned is you have to check everything. That's just what I learned. Actually, I just did that yesterday, so I have to check everything. Not cutting corners. That's a very valuable piece of advice from my advisor.
Okay. In terms of setting clear milestones, you talked about setting clear milestones and clear goals and objectives and then working backwards from those. What are the easiest mistakes to make in the process, mistakes that you might have made earlier on in terms of setting clear milestones?
Yes. The easiest mistake, I would say, you think things won't change, right? That would be the easiest mistake. You think, okay, in 5 years, I'm going to be like this. So now I need to do this. So you will think about like everything will stay the same way as you expect. So you need to be flexible. That's what I think. These are not necessarily contradict each other.
Right.
You need to set up the milestone at the same time. You need to be flexible because things just might change.
Sure.
Like in my case, I thought initially I will be doing a PhD in finance.
Right.
But it turns out I'm doing a PhD in marketing. So I think we have to be mindful that the flexibility needs to be there.
Right. As an active user of social media, a two-part question about that. First of all, what's the hidden positive thing about social media that nobody understands? And maybe the hidden negative thing about social media that nobody gets yet?
That's a really hard question. I still don't know the answer, but I would try.
Sure.
I think I don't know if this answer is like nobody really knows. But I would say it really provides a source of information.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And it might possibly increase your ability to filter wrong information.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because you have more information, you might need better ability to really filter out what is true. Because we actually know that fake news spread much more prevalent than true news.
Yes.
On especially like social media channels, right? A lot of people at MIT. So I think there's a professor at MIT studying this, like fake news spread out really, really fast. The good thing is, like at least in my work, I figure like if you post news stories in the morning, that works actually very good in terms of driving engagement because people are fresh and people have what we call higher working memory.
Right.
I don't know if that's the thing that people have in their mind is when you compare to the afternoon, like based on our data, post news stories in the morning works better, like drive more engagement.
Yes, and in my limited experience posting Facebook discussions and so forth had a similar outcome. And for me, it seemed like there was just more of an opportunity because it seemed like people were on Facebook most during work hours, ironically enough. And there was just more of an opportunity to kind of accrue sort of a minimum, not exactly critical mass, but a minimum amount of engagement. And then it would sort of carry you through the rest of the day. Whereas if you post in the afternoon, you'll get a couple of hours of comments and likes if that's what you're looking for. And then everybody goes home and the post kind of dies. Yeah. I don't know if that's...
Yeah, so I think that, basically there are, initially when I started working on this project, I didn't know the human psychology side of the story where like people will have different kinds of working memory that fluctuates over the day, where it's highest in the morning, lowest in the afternoon, and kind of comes back a little bit in the evening, but still not as high as in the morning. That is kind of the basic function human beings has to process or store or manipulate information.
Right, like RAM for the brain, I guess.
I would say yes. And then, so there are different kind of psychological mechanism. I still need to learn a lot from psychologists about what is really happening. Yeah. But here, basically what we found is posting story in the morning, maybe you give, you actually do that when people have more work memory to process those information.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And then in the afternoon, it doesn't work that well. But when you advertise, that's another finding we have is when you do sponsored advertising of post, that actually works better in the afternoon.
Oh.
Because when your working memory is low, you're actually looking for triggers.
Oh.
Because you have to prioritize things,
That's
right?
slick. I like this.
Right. So you have to look for triggers. That's why the advertising works better in the afternoon. So that's the research we get a chance to, work on and was published last year.
I love it. This is fascinating. We thought it might be fun to have some discussion about the holiday season. Are there any new trends you're seeing in marketing that people are getting ready to implement for the upcoming holiday season? What's at the cutting edge right now of consideration for marketing specifically around the holidays?
Yeah, that's a very cool question. I'm thinking about live streaming.
Okay.
So, in China, we're pretty big on this. Like we have a very big, I wouldn't say it's a holiday, but it's a big day for shopping. It's November 11th.
Okay.
Because that means like single, right? Because
Okay.
it's more like Singles Day. So November 11th is all one.
I see.
And so we have this, Alibaba, they have this Tmall. So they have huge events on that day and the sales is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I think, and nowadays, I think that's one thing I realized, leveraging events.
Mm-hmm.
That events are in two forms. One way it could be like gala. Like last year, I think they have a very big gala just to show that we're not just about shopping. We're not just having a huge, large customer base, but they also invite all these singers, dancers. They're hosting an event to even further drive traffic. Another kind of events will be live streaming, which is pretty big, that you have a broadcaster and you have a lot of people who are watching the broadcaster.
Yeah.
That's a new way of communicating your brand. So like a lot of brands may say, okay, broadcaster, can you just communicate my brand with such a broad audience? And it's much faster and easier way to reach a large online audience.
That's why we're here.
Live streaming, it's very cool, right? And we have. And I didn't know, I was never on one of the live streaming services. I don't really know how, but I know it's very, very famous, and it's such a big phenomenon nowadays where people just communicate their brands and they do advertising and people donate all the time. All these new transactions, new ways of behaving are happening in live stream world. So firms are leveraging that power.
Excellent. What's the best trip you've ever been on?
Actually, I would say one of the best trips I just had, which is from this earlier Wednesday to Sunday.
Okay.
I went to Missouri, Columbia to visit one of my best friends in the PhD program, Brady Hodges. He's an assistant professor at University of Missouri, Columbia right now.
Yeah.
I get to visit him and his family. He has 5 kids. So him, his wife, and 5 kids. So I spent a beautiful Halloween with them, starting from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We went to St. Louis Science Center. Mm-hmm. We went to the zoo. Yeah. I get to know both of them are free. And even parking is free. So, and get to spend a lot of time with this big family is really, really fun because, I don't have kids yet. Right. So it feels great. And my babysitting skills improved dramatically. I have to say that. And so Brady and his wife, Karen, said, we prepare you very, very well for the next couple of years.
Yeah, if they have 5, for sure. What else do you enjoy doing in your free time? You mentioned Chinese restaurants in Chicago.
Yes.
What do you like to do when you're not working?
I enjoy I love TV shows.
Yeah.
That's one thing I do. And I love singing. And probably most awkward things, I have electronic stand desk, right? So what I usually do is I would just play the music. I would sing and I would wiggling a little bit. Imagine I'm a hip hop dancer or something like that. So I would do that, which is what I enjoy doing. And I love movies.
Yeah.
So, and then that's pretty much the 3, I would call it individual, kind of, you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
So basically TV shows, movies, and singing. And of course, I love food, and I don't like cooking, but I love food.
I'm kind of the same. Rapid fire, what do you consider your most valuable failure?
So in my middle school, there was a math competition.
Yeah.
The instructor is the best of our province. And I thought I'm at least in the middle of the class, but I didn't get anything eventually for the math competition. Not first class, not second class, not even third class. And I realized maybe I'm not very good at that, like math competition related skill. But it turns out later in my life, I'm very good at it because we have this Olympic math kind of math and you have this regular math.
Right.
So I figured I'm not very good at that. So it's really helping me to understand that I'm not exactly where I am. So I chose something I'm very good at later in my life, which is like regular math, not really Olympics math.
Interesting. What do you think is people's biggest misconception of you?
People think I'm a very social guy.
Huh.
That's the big misconception.
If you could have anyone as a mentor for one day, who would it be?
If it's movie, it's going to be Christopher Nolan. I love him. If it's music, I want Charlie Puth for a day. Because I want to get into these people's minds, see what are they thinking about? Mm-hmm. How can they create the stuff they're creating?
Right.
That would be my one day mentor. I really, really want to have them. So
okay. Good choices. What is your fondest memory of Texas A&M?
Last year, I was, I was teaching marketing analytics for the junior and senior at Texas A&M.
Yeah.
So there was a Thursday class. But it's also my birthday. That was also my birthday. So my students sing birthday songs for me. It was really, really fun day for me. So after my teaching, so like everybody was like, Yixing, let's just do something for you. So they sing the birthday songs for me. I was pretty touched.
Yeah, that's very nice. Do you have anyone you want to send good bull?
I would say Dan McCarthy. He is an assistant professor of marketing at Emory University. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to promote, kind of propose this concept of a customer-based corporate evaluation is how marketing can make finance better. The idea is how you actually incorporate your customers as your assets and how that can improve your evaluation of firms. And he built statistical models on top of that. And he has this amazing impact on practice because I think one of the companies he founded just got acquired by Nike 2 years ago. So that's kind of I want to send out that message because I feel like he is a role model in the sense that he's a marketing professor, a researcher, but also creating real impact on practice.
That's great. I'd like to send good bull to my friend Monica Dancel, who just got engaged recently.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes, congrats to you, Mon. Thank you so much for joining us, Yixing.
Thank you
really
so much,
appreciate
Ben.
your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to stay up to date on our latest videos, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to receive notifications. If you're in a rush or on the road, you can still join us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. If you want to learn more about us or our guests, please visit our website at mays.tamu.edu/podcasts. Also, please check out Mays Business School's academic programs. They're the sponsors of our show, and you can find them in the description. Thanks, and gig 'em.